real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Welcome back, everyone. Nathan Romas with you. We are coming up to Remembrance Day, and I've got a number of guests lined up to talk about service and sacrifice. We are going to talk about their experiences in training and deployments, the memories, the people, and impacts of service. I also have my American co-host, John Simpson, here. John is a veteran of the U.S. Army with over 40 years of practical experience. He's an instructor with Snipercraft Incorporated and a research historian who has authored several books on the fundamentals and advanced tactics of marksmanship and sniper skills. That brings us to our guest today. It's retired Lieutenant Colonel William Bill Fleser. Bill was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army Infantry Branch in 1979 from Central Michigan University's Reserve Officer Training Corps, or ROTC program. He served honorably in the United States Army through 22 years of active service, primarily in special forces and infantry assignments. Bill has served as far and wide of places as Alaska, Germany, Sierra Leone, and Bosnia, to name a few. He completed his active duty service as the Deputy Director for Operations at Special Operations Command, Europe, in early 2001. Also, Bill's wife, Kathy, served as an EMT or emergency medical technician and then as a registered nurse. So lots of service in the family. So we'll get to talking about that, but welcome to you guys.
Nathan, hey, thanks a lot. I'm really appreciative of being able to contribute to this forum. I'm proud anytime to join John Simpson in any endeavor. And if this really goes bad, it's he who talked me into this, so we will blame him. As we were discussing the intro, this might, given the nature of the audience or the participants you've had in the past, this may end up being one of the most boring Quiet Professional segments ever, given my career. But as you said, hey, this is about service. I was happy and proud to serve my country. Happy and proud to serve with Canadians in the past in a lot of different capacities. And the fact that this is airing on your Remembrance Day is a particular note to me, given the many contacts, not enough probably, that I have in Canadian forces. So, and I appreciate the intro you recognize, and Kathy's contribution to this. It's probably a lot more in depth than that, but yeah, she's in the family. This is sort of a family endeavor, and I appreciate your recognition of that. So, how can I contribute to the podcast here?
You know, I will say right off the beginning, when you sent over your bio, you're one of the few people that, like throughout the whole thing, you talked a lot about family. So you mentioned what your family's doing, where they kind of are with you. And I'd say a lot of people, just in general, it doesn't even have to be these episodes, but a lot of people they'll staple it on to the end. And I'm married with this many kids, and that's kind of it. But I thought I kind of picked up on that, and I thought that was unique in that you kind of weave that into the bio. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because I thought, you're trying to get a point across. Like, that's a very important part of this, important part of your journey through your career. Obviously, it's hard to do it if, your significant other isn't there with you, as well as your kids. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I think I construct that way. I've constructed a couple different bios, but when you kind of look, okay, now we're all old farts. We can look back over time and go like, hey, if this hadn't happened the way it did, things would be a lot different. And the contributions, the encouragement of the family, what they did and how we balanced service and family life, all that sort of becomes more obvious as you get older and realize that things are important. And the fact that we do have, the family is intact and contributing in their own way to my daughter is currently a contractor in the Office of Secretary of Defense for Policy up in D.C. And my son is a director of evangelization in the Catholic Church here in Richmond, Virginia. So everybody's serving in their own way. And it's been, like I said, been my honor to sort of work through that over the last 20 or 30 years.
Awesome.
As my old boss said, good time had by all.
Yeah. You know what? Well, we'll get into that. We'll talk more about family, but just to start, we'll talk a bit about you. So if you could kind of start us at the beginning, tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, what growing up was like, and what kind of drove you into a life of service.
Yeah, I'm coming from a small town in West Michigan, a place called Steel, Michigan, just in western uh, uh, western part of Lower Peninsula, Michigan. I grew up in what we call the Dutch colony of Michigan. I tell people the Dutch invaded Michigan in 1856, but we stopped them at the Grand River, so they never got any further. But so I was kind of marooned in this colony of Dutch people that my parents were school teachers. But again, sort of tapping on that theme of family is my father was a naval aviator in World War II, never served overseas, but went through all that. A few of my uncles served overseas. One of them is a tank guy under Patton. All the guys in my church growing up, well, all the youth leaders were all World War II vets. So that I'm sure that had a big effect on me as a kid. As Reverend said, I think I was talking to a high school friend the other day, and she said you were the only person that didn't know you were going into the army or the military. So it was sort of part of my upbringing, part of the cloth. And then sort of the high school area, you're trying to figure stuff out. Yes, I'd rather be a fighter pilot. But my eyes were so bad that I couldn't see across the street. So
Mm.
I found my way to an ROTC scholarship into Central Michigan University, and went from there in terms of joining the military and serving. Had great mentors and great instructors in those areas. Again, I'm of the generation immediately post Vietnam, so virtually everybody who had their fingerprints on me going through training, selection assessment, things like that,
Yeah.
were Vietnam vets, and a lot of that rubbed off. I'm not a Vietnam era veteran, but I like to tell people I did sign a contract in April of 1975, the same week the uh, Vietnamese took over Saigon. So that loomed
Okay.
large in my youth and was a shaping factor of sort of why I wanted to choose the military. Didn't really choose it as a career to start off with. Said, hey, I'll do this for a couple of years, paid for college, that sort of thing. But then sort of found that every time you turned over a rock and went to a new assignment, hey, there was some new adventure out there, some new people out there, good stuff to go on, etc.
What were your aspirations? So you're just talking about paying for school and stuff. So is there a certain kind of path you had envisioned for yourself?
I didn't really envision the military as a career. I said I wanted to do some work after college. I went to a state school, so it wasn't like I was in huge amounts of debt back then.
Mm.
But wanted to take a look at that and then sort of see what life brought. And along the way, Kathy and I got married in 1981. So I was a young officer then, and we tried to determine what we did after the first assignment, and then we landed in the special forces, and sort of stuck that out for the rest of my active career. Although I was in that era before there was really a branch of service in
Mm.
special forces, so I bounced back and forth between the infantry and SF for a couple of years.
Okay. When you were looking at getting into service, into the military, what are your family? What do they think of that? I imagine they're obviously supportive if there's a whole history of it. However, sometimes I guess depending on what they've gone through on their side of things, they might not want you to go in that. So, what was that like? Once you decide to go that career path, were family a part of that decision?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'm the of the generation. My father was a family of 8 brothers and 2 sisters, so big family.
Mhm.
And I'm the only one of all those cousins that went into the military as a full time deal. A lot of my cousins are all educators and managers and school teachers and things like that. And all of them doing very well. Um, but nobody ever said to me, "Hey, what you really think about this?" My uncles were, appreciative of it. But again, in those days, it really didn't come up. We were just doing it.
Mm,
Okay, great. Um, there wasn't a big, "Hey, you're going to do this the rest of your life. Be thinking about this kind of thing." So, family was definitely supportive, um, but not really. Wasn't a big deal, I guess. That's what I'm
okay.
trying to say.
And especially with the Vietnam period, uh, there's a lot of different narratives out there, and this came up in some of the other discussions we had. But yeah, sometimes I guess some people might not join. They might have a different view, kind of coming out of that war. Uh, so that's just kind of why I was asking about that, like just to see if there was anything there. Um, but yeah, no. So you go off. You're getting into this program, the ROTC program. Can you kind of describe that? You said you went with a scholarship.
Yeah, the Army's got a program where they, uh, you compete the ACT scores, writing inputs, things like that, and they award scholarships based on potential. The Army got a hell of a bargain out of me because
Hmm.
I took a scholarship. My mother was pissed I didn't go to Notre Dame because I could have gotten me some big bucks at Notre Dame. But my mom, God rest her soul, was always pissed I went to Central because it was a fun school.
Hmm.
And the guys in the ROTC department kind of put the hook into me up there. And then uh, you mentioned the Vietnam era. That was definitely the America post Vietnam. Watergate was ongoing my senior year of high school. So serving in the military was not what, of the 160 so kids in my high school class. I think uh, I had my best friend went to Air Force Academy, flew jets. My other best friend went enlisted directly in the Army and retired as a colonel. So made it all the way from private E1 to colonel. You might talk to him; he's got a way more interesting story than I got. But yeah, and then me. So of all that high school, three of us sort of decided we were going to take that route in our class. And then at Central, it was a very small program at that time. We were stuck over the building, and again, ROTC was a couple of drill meetings a week, a couple of classes, and then uh, there are extracurricular events that you could take part in, drill team, drill and ceremonies type activities, and then also uh, ranger type activities where we focused on small unit tactics, patrolling. And that's probably where I got a lot of taste for uh, light infantry, small unit stuff. Was being trained by the non-commissioned officers in the ROTC program, one of which was a Green Beret along the way. So
Okay.
that sort of framed a lot of what I was thinking about and said, okay, that looks good to me. Let's give that a try. So opted after 4 years of that, was selected to be in the infantry. Happy news. And then went off to Fort Benning, Georgia, to do infantry training and go from there.
Can you explain just the ROTC part for anyone who doesn't know, and even for myself? What is ROTC? Like, where does it fall kind of in the structure of the getting into the service there, and
Sure.
what that looks like? Because you go to infantry training after.
Yeah, check. I mean, ROTC is another one of the United States Army's assessment selection process for officers. Its primary purpose is to train and assess personnel to become commissioned officers in the United States Army. They don't. The primary source is West Point, New York, United States Military Academy. But there's no way that the military academy can meet the needs of the big Army. So they have these programs in U.S. universities across the nation. I don't know how many
Hmm.
there are currently. It sort of ebbs and flows over time. Central set of programs since way before my time, and it still exists. And through that program, then you get uh, training. You get assessed by a cadre of officers that are there on campus. You go to at least one summer camp over the years where you go through like 8 weeks of basic training activity between your junior and senior year, and also you have the opportunity to take in some U.S. Army schools if they're available. I went to I went to U.S. Airborne School when I was my second year of college.
Okay.
So, it's designed, I think, to give you a more diverse workforce within the U.S. So you're taking for people from all across the United States in essentially all academic fields, and giving them the opportunity to earn a commission in the U.S. Army.
So when you finish ROTC, you go to the basic training. After basic, is that, and then you would just kind of go off in a different path than anybody who just went straight into the basic infantry training?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the process, you essentially apply to but what branch of service do you want to serve in? So that's infantry, armor, uh, field artillery, combat arms fields, combat support fields like military intelligence. So essentially, based on your record and the needs of the Army comes back to you with a set of orders that says, "Congratulations, Lieutenant Fleser, you're going to the United States Army Infantry." So you can go pretty much any direction. Some officers take their commissions in the National Guard or Reserve, so they don't go directly on active duty. They may do a couple of years in the reserve. So that's also the source of commissioning for a lot of the reserve and National Guard units here in the states.
Okay.
And so once you sort of get your basic branch, that really determines then your career path. And the Army's got a ton of regulations that tells you what you got to do to be a good, upstanding second lieutenant of the infantry, armor, field artillery, whatever your initial basic branch is.
Okay. Hey, so let's talk about training. What's training like at this time? So you're going through. Can you kind of talk about maybe even just some of the instructors? Because you're saying there's a lot of people with the Vietnam experience that have some impact on you. So what does this period kind of look like for you? Was it enjoyable when you look back on it? Maybe it sucked while you're in there, but when you look back now, what was it all like?
I can only say it was a hoot. I mean, got. I mean, you had the opportunity to go do some things you wouldn't normally do in college. Example was going to airborne school. Um, you were on a campus that wasn't anti-military, but they weren't jumping up and down to say, "Hey, we're happy to have you guys." We were still in the sort of baby killer mode of post-Vietnam stress disorder, if I can use that term.
Hmm.
But we had cadre guys that had served combat tours in Vietnam that were, um, once we sort of got out of the classroom and we go out in the farm fields of Michigan and learn how to low crawl they gave me an M14 rifle back then. And I thought that was the coolest thing I ever saw in my life. And never let me shoot it, but except with blanks. But it was a righteous piece of kit. Um, you got to do those sort of things. You got to do river crossings, stream crossings, those type of things. At the same time, you're going to school and then getting a degree. So the hard part is getting up at 6 in the morning when your roommates are asleep until 10. You got to get up at 6 and go do some level of drilling ceremonies and things like that. So the cadre members, both Vietnam and then immediately post afterwards, they have a huge opportunity to shape first of all, your view of the Army, what it's actually like to be an officer. I was blessed with good cadre members, one of whom I live about a mile from right now. So I find myself in
Okay.
retirement now living about a mile away from a guy who was the commandant of cadets in my college, 45 years ago. So it's plenty of fun, and so have a tight little Central Michigan crew up here at Lake Anna, Virginia, that reminisces back on those days. And you got people that talked about what combat was like, what it wasn't like,
Hmm.
and so you got that sort of flavor of things from the cadre.
Do you find when people were giving you kind of those experiences, they're describing that stuff, does that only fuel your fire for kind of going down this path? Or do you find, did anybody or yourself, do you kind of go, I don't know, like maybe this isn't for me? Is there ever that thought or not really?
Yeah, nobody ever put any. I don't remember ever getting those sort of scare stories. I got,
Hmm.
you know, the you'll know you're in combat when you know you're in combat type of thing. I think what the more important thing that the cadre imprinted on me was sort of a practical knowledge of what being an officer and being in an army unit was actually like.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is incredibly mundane, but it's comes down to what back in that army, uh, an inspector general inspection was a big deal, and having all your kit cleaned and everything dress right, dress on your bunk, and going through that process. And we heard about things like that then imprinted themselves. Simple soldier discipline, how to tell I'll use a bad term, how to tell a dirtbag from a soldier was sort of imprinted on us. So you were able then to get an active. Once you're in active duty, you go like, oh, okay, that's what's going on here.
Hmm.
So a lot of it was just real practical knowledge of what serving in that army were like. And again, I make no parallels to today's U.S. Army. That's like 6 armies ago. We were the hollow Jimmy Carter Army when we got on active duty because of the Vietnam drawdown and as you said, the sort of general malaise against military service from the late 1970s, similar recruiting crisis that we're going through today.
Yeah.
Um, when I walked out in front of my platoon for the first time at Fort Lewis, Washington, I'm looking at my table of organization equipment. It says I got 40 dudes out there. I got 19. Um,
Wow.
uh, so that was the extent of the hollowness of that army. I don't think anybody from my generation that sort of lived through that would forget that. Uh,
Yeah.
but again, I thought I was well prepped for that because of the uh, the efforts of the cadre at Central Michigan very much put you in a position where you know good from bad, you know right from wrong, and you're going to figure things out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and when you're talking about some of the basic training stuff, so I went through with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police up here. It's a paramilitary law enforcement organization, but you go live on base uh, for 6 months, and they've got you up doing things all day, all night,
Yep.
very structured. And I think when you're in it, uh, yeah, there's parts that kind of suck. There's the hard part of it. But when I look back on it now, I think like that's some of the coolest things I ever did. There's some experiences that, yeah, and I say that same line that you're using, like you get to do things that nobody else gets to do. That's part of the privilege of that job. Um, but it's like you seek that out. You want to do those experiences, right? Because other people, it's like once you pass that time, well, there's no going back. Like you don't get to do that, or it'd be very hard to. So when you look back, it's a unique experience, and it might have been hard at the moment, but now you're thankful for it. Um, so after you're kind of going through training, can you walk us through a bit of your first experiences once you're out there and where your career kind of takes you from here?
Yeah, okay. Early, as said, late 1970s. First assignment is in Fort Lewis, Washington, Ninth Infantry Division. I mean, if you have a central theme, I thought about this and sort of reread the bio that I wrote there. Go. The bad news is for my 22 God career, a lot of the organization I was in, aren't there anymore. So I, I'm not trying to be a typhoid Mary, but if I touch something, a lot of times it didn't survive if I served in it. So there's a bunch of organizations like that. One of being the Ninth Infantry Division, which we called the Screaming Cookie back in those days because of the big cookie patch. So that got me to Fort Lewis, Washington. Uh, again, that a great environment to train out there. Was a platoon leader for a couple of years. Became a support platoon leader, which was that's a beans and bullets guy for an infantry battalion. Takes care of feeding, fueling, and ammunition for a battalion in the field. Um, but sort of early on there, I got the idea that the regular army's fun, but that's not necessarily what I signed up for. So I started looking into going to special forces. Back then, you could still go as lieutenant. I received a lot of advice not to do that, um, and you know, sort of one of those times you go like, "Wonder how life would have been different if I'd have jumped on at that early point in life, I didn't.
Hmm.
So I had uh, I would consider my time at Fort Lewis incredibly well spent. That was about the time they were, trying to figure out what next, what the Army in the future was going to be like. Um, it was the middle of the Cold War, so we had no idea what our actual mission was going to be. We weren't on return to forces Germany lift, so we weren't going anywhere. Uh, you know, Turns out one of our missions, um, in the event of a crisis, was be deployed to Portland, Oregon, and protect the post office. So that was kind of one of those moments when I saw that. First time I get to see classified material. Here's the war plan. It's going to show me what we're going to do. I'm going, Portland?
Yeah.
Really? It? I signed up for that. So that was about the time I said, "Hey, there's probably something else out there that I might be better at than being a support platoon or than being a platoon leader or infantry guy." But love the infantry. I just talked about being a support platoon leader. Probably one of my more interesting jobs, just because you had to creatively figure out how to feed and uh, get fuel to people in the woods. And if you didn't do your job, the whole thing came to a screeching halt.
Hmm.
So, um, handling ammunition, those type of things were part and parcel of my job for about 18 months. At the end of that time, then they send you back to Fort Benning, Georgia, to what's called the Captain's Career Course in the United States Army, which is another 3 or 4 months of under the sun. And then I made the choice to go to Special Forces after that.
Okay. So at this point, you've moved around a few times. Um, and is that your wife's coming along with you? Or if you do these shorter stints, like 3 months here or 4 months there, does your family kind of just stay in one place or they ship them with you?
For that, we call that a permanent change of station in U.S. Army parlance. So, my first permanent change of station was to Fort Lewis. Kathy and I were married while we were out there. She finished college, and then we linked up a year or so later, and got married. Got married back in Detroit, where her home is, and then
Mm.
she moved out to Fort Lewis. We sort of started the package deal from that point. Um, I would say at Fort Lewis, just because we are on a Canadian network, and being up north is sort of part and parcel of my center of gravity. Is That was the first time we got to deploy to Alaska, and
Okay.
so I got to see the Fairbanks during the time frame when the pipeline was being built. In fact, that's
Mm.
a lot of. We spent some time there, and then in Fort Drum, New York. Um, the just because of the nature of the business there, and did got to do some mountaineering, got to climb Mount Rainier, climbed up Mount Adams, some other place out there. Was was a graduate of having gone to Ranger School as part of my lieutenant training. My Ranger buddy turned out to be a specialist fourth class in the second 75th Infantry Rangers out there in Lewis. So he and I would go off and do just crazy, stupid shit. Yeah, hiking and backpacking and climbing mountains and things like that. Both before and after I was married. Let's just say there was a downturn of those type of activities after I was married.
Yeah.
So
You know what? I don't think we've had anybody on here that's been to Alaska. Hey, John? Like, I don't think we've talked to anybody that's been up there, but
Yeah, not stationed there.
yeah. So you obviously embraced the lifestyle up there for a while. And, what was it like? How long were you there? And then can you just describe kind of what job were you doing while you were up there?
the first time I was up there, like I said, we were just up there for a 2 month deployment.
Mm.
So it was cold weather indoctrination is a word we use now. We did
Okay.
a couple of sizes up there, but then fast forward a couple of years. Again, I was in that era when there wasn't a S Special Forces branch in the Army. There wasn't an 18 series, so I was still an infantryman. And when I completed my first assignment in SF. We're getting out of chronological order here, but I then had the opportunity to go back and serve in the infantry. So I chose to go to Alaska. So I commanded an infantry company up there in Alaska for 18 months or 3 winters, depending on how you're counting it.
Okay.
And so had the opportunity to go up there. And then to answer your question, yeah, very much adopted the lifestyle of Alaska. Was wicked cool as far as both their environment. Um, uh, you gotta, in my again, a lot of this obviously is my opinion. You gotta soldier up there in a regular infantry outfit, and the environment makes you be a cut above simply because if you don't, you'll get yourself killed or get other people hurt right away if you're not don't have your shit together.
Hmm.
So I just really enjoyed the time I had as an infantry company commander up there, but that sort of gets us out of whack. Where I did a couple years in Army Special Forces before I went back then to be
Yeah.
an infantry company.
You know what? We can do, jump back to just beginning of SF, because I wanted to ask about what the process was like. So when you say you went to SF, what does that look like for you, or what's the path that kind of entails?
And John will know this. It's different for non-commissioned officers than it is for officers. I mean,
Mhm.
we get to
But first, Bill. So what year did you volunteer for SF?
1983. So I completed the captain's career course, and at the end of that period of time, or somewhere along there, they bring you into a big room, and there's a bunch of guys sitting at tables, and that's all the future assignments. And it's kind of a job fair, frankly. So you walk around, you kind of like, where do you want to go? Well, I made a beeline to the special forces table because that's what I wanted to do. And special forces had a requirement for 5 guys out of my class to join special forces. To was what the requirement was. Well, there were only 3 guys on the list, me and 2 other guys. They actually had to draft 2 other guys, just given that special forces at that time was A, not viewed as a career enhancer, and B, not viewed as a necessarily fun assignment. I mean,
Hmm.
the assignment officer basically says at that point, "You sure you want to do that? I mean, you're probably going to recharge retire as a major in '04 if you do that. In fact, you might not even make '04." And I'm going like, chance of me making '04 ain't that good anyway. So what the hell?
Well, I'm wondering, like, so when you think of special forces now, I mean, that's what everybody sees in the movies or in the books and stuff, and I think people think that's the way to go. But at this time, so in the early '80s, how come SF is it looked down upon, or is it just super new and nobody really knows what to make of it? Like, what's kind of the thought process around that? How come they're questioning your decision making and saying, like, are you sure? Like, what other path should you take?
Yeah, I think anybody who joined Army Special Forces during that period will tell you there was definitely a career prejudice within what we now euphemistically call Big Darn Army. That hey, that wasn't the way to go. The world situation was this. I mean, if you wanted to get ahead in the army, you needed to be a tanker on the Fulda Gap because that's where the money was going and that's where the promotions were happening. So Fulda Gap
Mm.
being in Germany, facing off with the Russian horde. So special forces very much. You guys are all snake eaters. Walk around with your hands in your pockets. Yes. Um, you got your hat on the back of your head. You're not paying attention to what's going on. You don't think what we're doing is important. You want to find a different way. So there was very much I think a fair term is prejudiced against the against Army SF that time, and there really wasn't a means to go up as an officer. You sort of topped out at a certain level, and like I said, the guy was giving me honest advice when he said you'll probably retire as a major,
Mhm.
just because that's where the
Yeah.
jobs ran out. There wasn't the big structure that there is today. There
Okay.
were only, I think, what, John, 6 SF groups back then?
Yeah, yeah. If you counted the reserves and National Guard, but so just to clarify, Nathan, SF had actually um, it actually started in the 1950s, and it really it hit its first peak in in the early 1960s. That was when President John F. Kennedy awarded the Green Beret to Special Forces, because prior to that, it was like unauthorized headgear. And then, to answer your question, it was a combination of factors where, um, basically because of the secretive nature of SF, a lot of people actually didn't know what we did. And like when I went to SF training in 1978, Bill was talking about the Carter administration. There was like serious talk where, well, now that we have the 1st and 2nd Ranger Battalion, we're going to disband Special Forces. So
Yep.
as I and my classmates are going through school, we're going through the Special Forces qualification course. We, in the backs of our minds, we thought we were going to wind up the most highly qualified privates in the 82nd Airborne Division, because there wouldn't be a Special Forces group to go to.
Yeah.
But as far as the career, so basically it's like you had like a don't quote me on this. So you had you had a 2-star in command of the Special Warfare Center at Fort Bragg. You had a 1-star who was in charge of the Special Forces School. And then the highest rank you could get in the Special Forces group was to be the commander, and that was a full colonel.
Okay.
So you had these, and then on top of that, all of the exploits that Special Forces was doing in Vietnam with like MACV-SOG, it was only like declassified within the past couple decades.
Yeah.
So nobody knew what the contributions were. So it was one of these things where we're a bunch of secretive guys running around. If you're, and as Bill said, when he came in, when he went to SF, he was still wearing the cross rifles of an infantry officer.
Yeah.
And he was up for, at any time, his career was being controlled by infantry branch up in the Pentagon. So he could find himself on a worldwide assignment anywhere that they needed an infantry officer. There was no Special Forces branch that would like manage his career.
Okay.
And now we're at the point where we have, there's like a 4-star general that can be Special Forces qualified. Okay. So that was, that kind of gives the circumstances that we were living in at that time.
Okay. I like this kind of the talk about the Special Forces and what, just how it was viewed at this time.
Right.
And it's interesting in that, like, you were saying it started in the 50s, but even 30 years later, like that feels like a long time later, they're still like, it's not really respected, I guess. But it is also partially due to the secretive nature of it. And it's like, well, you're not out there pumping out the branding. So people just kind of see you as like, they just want to be super cool guys over there or something. So,
but one of my favorites is that especially after Iraq and Afghanistan, it's like nobody has any memory that it was a bunch of Special Forces guys with beards on horseback that initially knocked over Afghanistan. But nowadays, it's like there's no shortage of, hey, did you hear what the SEALs did here? And boy, we're gonna,
yeah.
So it all comes down to publicity.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's the intriguing nature of this podcast. Is the name of it, The Quiet Professional, which is, John and I went back and forth about, do you want to talk about some of this stuff? It's never you want to talk about it because it was somehow traumatic or secret or way high speed, so high speed that nobody will understand it. It's like, okay, it's just not in the nature to talk about it.
Yeah.
Except there's a ton of guys who've done a shitload more than I ever have. That are out there, but again, nobody ever. We get together as a group and we talk all the time. But so putting some out there, is a little different factor.
We were just talking about that on the previous podcast, as a matter of fact. I mean, pretty much those exact same words.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think it's one of the reasons you join it. You're not joining a group of people that want to go. I couldn't have joined the SEALs on a bet. I can't blow bubbles, but God bless those guys. But their publicity stuff is pretty good. Again, I've heard more about JSOC in the last couple of years than I ever did on active duty, because it's all on the press, and things are being said about it. So that's just kind of the way things are and how things evolve over time. A guy you guys ought to talk to in the future is a colleague of mine named Mark Gurnovich, who has written a book about what really went on in northern Iraq during the not during the Gulf War, but during the post 9/11.
Okay.
Which is a fascinating story of. He's written a book, so he'll be able to. He's got a coherent idea of what went on. He was the operations officer for 10th Special Forces Group that John and I both served in, and they did some pretty heroic stuff, very much on a limb during that never saw the light of day.
Okay.
So God bless Mark for putting it out there. It's just now going to print.
Yeah, because I could always put him on at any time in the year. So yeah, especially if he's got a book.
Yeah, no, he's got a great. They got a great story to tell on that one.
Okay.
All right, sorry, we got off track. Let me.
Oh, good.
Let me just go back to the. Okay, so decision to join the Special Forces. Yeah, you got some advice one way or the other from the career people, but you also had to consult Kathy and find out what she wanted to do. And this is probably where I told my biggest lie ever, which is, hey, I'm going to do one assignment and then we'll figure out from there. Well, that is kind of what happened, but we ended up, multiple special ops assignments ongoing. So after that, but the Kathy was definitely okay with it. We talked about it at some length, what that would mean. So
was it easy for her to move around with her job at this time? Was she EMT at this time?
now here's the deal. This is why I kind of was happy that you include this discussion there is, and again, part of the hard part of being a military spouse, again, now looking back, is that you can't have a career if you found the active duty spouse around. First of all, I don't know how two people do it on active duty. So two people married to each other in military, I don't know how you do it. Probably the same in police world. The stresses there just to me seem to be wickedly tough.
Yeah.
But every time we start getting going, I'd get a set of orders. Bam, Kathy'd have to uproot, and there was no protection for jobs. Like she was working for the Inspector General at Fort Lewis when I got a set of orders. Had a great government service job, but couldn't keep it. Didn't transfer. Blam. Down to Fort Benning, nothing. Got up to Fort Lewis, up to Fort Devens. Again, got another job. Got a master's degree, business in business. Had our first child. All of that stuff going on. So she never really had the opportunity to get a solid career going. Doesn't mean she didn't contribute at all, because she was in it all the time. But it was always, I'm certain, frustrating for her that, okay, just as soon as I get going, the freaking Department of the Army sends you someplace else.
Yeah.
Just about when I'm getting tenured in these jobs. So hats off to military spouses who have had to live through that for to support our careers.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's similar when like up here with the mounted police, there was an aspect of that where like the career comes first. Your spouse would just have to move. Like, too bad. This is where the service needs you, so you got to go. But I find some of those skills like EMT or nursing. I know a lot of people's spouses are teachers. A lot of times those skills and those that education stuff can follow you, right? So it's not that it isn't bad that okay, I got to keep uprooting, but wherever you land, you've got skills that are transferable, and you'll find something there. because you can always use more nurses or teachers. So yeah, but it is a bit of a tough situation when it's, you just can't really bed down any roots. So I get
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but like I said, we were fortunate enough to survive that. Married for 45 years next year. So I'm a lucky sucker when it comes to that deal. So where'd we leave off? All right. So I'm up.
Yeah. So so basically you walked away from the table and you were volunteered for special forces.
Yeah. I mean, that was, John, I probably had a similar experience in the Q course as you did. In that, sounds like you and I are both pre-selection and assessment.
Yes.
Q course. And Nathan, for you, now when you go to Army Special Forces, they've realized that um, there's always a push pull in the Special Forces course. When John and I were growing up, do we make it so hard to weed people out? Yes, we need to weed people out that don't want to be here. But how do you make that balance in with training people how to be unconventional warriors? So that's always been the push pull in Army Special Forces. To get over that, then they came up with this selection assessment program where to nowadays you go for a couple of weeks and do what John and I did at Camp McCall as part of what was called Phase One, then, which is you basically get dorked around with every day.
Yeah. So back in the day, so when Bill and I were doing it, it's like he was talking about PCS moves earlier. Okay, so it's a permanent change of station. So the thing is, it's like he's an officer at Fort Lewis, Washington. He volunteers for special forces. The Army cuts him orders, sending him and his family and everything he owns to new quarters at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, for him to go to special forces training. And then basically, if he failed out any portion of it, then he's like open up for, like I said before, any worldwide assignment that needs an infantry officer. And an additional reason for special forces selection is to prevent people from gaming the system. Because what used to happen was you would be usually a sergeant in a dead end assignment somewhere that you wanted to get out of. Let's say that you've been stationed in Germany as a tanker and you just can't stand, you're afraid you're going to die there. So you volunteer for special forces. There's always a priority for SF. So you meet the criteria. You get orders for a permanent change of station to Fort Bragg. You get there and then, oh wow, this training's too hard for me. I terminate. And then basically it's like then you're open for a new assignment.
Okay.
But you got out of Germany. So now with the selection and assessment that Bill was talking about, you volunteer for SF and you get TDY or temporary duty orders. You go, your family stays behind at your duty station. You go TDY to Fort Bragg. You go through selection and assessment. At the end, win, lose, or draw, you go back to your home station. If you pass, they send you orders.
Yeah.
Doing a PCS for Bragg. If you don't pass, they're like, oh, well, better luck next time.
There's always somebody trying to game the system. It always happens.
Go figure.
Yeah. So, kind of what comes out of this. So once you're through this part of your career, what's next for you?
Well, once you get through the Special Forces qualification course, and I'm sure there's been guys on talk about that, so I won't. No real highs and lows.
Okay.
Well, the one thing I did want to ask, when you went through, had they transitioned, because they used to have the Special Forces officer course, and did you go through the Special Forces qualification course with NCOs as your classmates?
During Phase One, yes. So we were mixed bag in Phase One. Then you went to Phase Two, which was sort of the officer piece, and then for us that was okay, Nathan. So once you get through past that Phase One in the NCO world, then you go to your specialization course. Weapons guys go to weapons training. Demo guys go to engineer training. Medics go to the toughest part, 18 months of med lab, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the specialization that's on an 18. And then you all get back together in phase 3 for a practical unconventional warfare exercise. For the officers, it's a bit different because they go, I was raised by the by the generation of NCOs. The first lesson I learned to back up all the way to basic course, some Vietnam era OCS guys grabbed me and said, "Okay, you guys are lieutenants now. You're not in ROTC no more. Answer this question: how do you put up a flagpole?" And we got together, all of our guys from the University of Alabama and Notre Dame. We're all putting our hands together. How are we going to do this flagpole thing? And the guys, the OCS guys, looked at us and go, "No, dumb shit. You don't do that. You say, Sergeant, put that flagpole up, and then stand back and let the NCOs figure out how to do that shit, and you guys supervise what's going on."
Delegation.
And so that's always stuck with. That's always stuck with me. It's like, hey, you can be as an officer, you can be too hands on and try to be as competent as the NCOs. That's never going to happen, for starts. And second of all, you need to be a competent leader, but you don't need to be so involved in the minutia of what's going on that you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So for the Q course, to get back to that, then for us, for officers at that point, it's you get 2 weeks of weapons training, you get a week of demo training, you get some medical training. So you kind of get over for about 6 weeks, you get a taste of every other, what all the NCOs are going through. Back then we were sending commo on HF radio with leg keys and hardwire antennas. So they tried to teach us Morse code. Dismal failure. So you had those kind of things that were going on back in that time. And then again, in the Q course, you do your what's called Robin Says. They drop you out in the back end of North Carolina, and you train and equip guerrilla force to go raise havoc behind enemy lines. And that was a pretty good graduation exercise. So
I'm just wondering, at this time too, with all the things going on in the world, like, is there any thought to like we could end up in another war? Is that in your mind? Is there certain events going on that might lead you to be like, hey, we could actually get deployed? Or is everybody that's around you kind of going, yeah, we're not going anywhere?
Yeah, you keep reminding me of things I forgot to mention or we didn't mention. But the answer, yes. When you get to 10th group, then it's all about the Cold War and what the 10th group was supposed to do to help counter a Soviet invasion of Eastern Europe. But the one that jumps out of my mind, and again, of everybody else who was in Ranger Class 10-79. Now we back up to my time as a second lieutenant in Ranger School in Florida. The Ranger instructors came busting into our patrol base one morning and said, "The embassy's just been taken. We're on orders to augment the 2nd Battalion or 3rd Battalion in case they got to go rescue the hostages."
Mm.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but I tell you what, at that point in time, we absolutely believed it. So everybody was like, we're locked and loaded, ready to go. So it was that focusing moment. You go like, okay, this could suddenly go from a training situation to something that's real world. And again, that's sort of the other attraction of Special Forces to me was there's actually a chance to get into some real world operations, not necessarily have to go to global thermonuclear war with the Ruskies kind of thing. So
Yeah.
happy to do that.
Yeah.
And again, that popped out very much at 10th group when I got up there. It was at that point in time, it was all about, again, everything. I'm trying to put this kind of stuff in context. As you said, Nathan, what was going on at the time. So I'm up at 10th group early, mid 80s, 84. And that's right in the middle of the Cold War. And right in the middle of this period where the Special Forces were trying to, as it is right now, trying to figure out what's our role, what's Special Forces' role in a major conventional conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to do? And again, I will commend to anybody who wants to read about this in detail, look up Lieutenant General Charlie Cleveland's RAND study about Special Forces. It's basically General Cleveland's version of what we're doing here, except in excruciating detail, talks about this, where the leadership of SF didn't believe, not so much in SF, but the leadership didn't believe there was a real resistance potential in Eastern Europe. So 10th Group in particular moved away from unconventional warfare as a mission set to strategic reconnaissance.
Okay.
So the mission of the group at that point was to jump deep into Eastern Europe and watch selected road and rail lines for movements of the Soviet, what we called the second echelon back then, try to determine where they were going to make their major pushes. So that was the consuming mission of my time as a A detachment commander, and then subsequently as a staff officer in the 10th Group. Again, that involved us, given the climate, a lot of winter warfare training. Yes, we went skiing. All you 7th Group guys, we were bitching good skiers. I was trained by some of the best skiers on the planet to ski in plastic skis and rubber boots. I'm like, I take no shame in that. We had great times doing that. There are people in Rasputin's bar in Burlington, Vermont, that still remember us. I can just tell you that. Anyway, so that was the sort of time in 10th Group was based on that, and coincidentally, that's where I ran into your co-host John Simpson.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that then, because then we can talk about what it's like managing John.
Well, that came later.
That came later.
Yeah, I never worked for Bill at Fort Devens.
Yeah, no, but we shared it. We shared a compound. I mean, probably my biggest regret in Special Forces is the fact that I got 1 year and 1 minute as an A-team leader, and then I got moved up to staff. Probably lots of reasons for that, not the least of which, I know this is going to sound shocking, maybe I shot my mouth off too much about we should be doing this and not that kind of thing. So I got bounced out of the 3rd Battalion and up to the group to staff to run this program that we called CASMAP back in those days, Command Area Study Mission Analysis Program. Part of Special Forces doctrine is before you go any place, you study the turf, the culture, the language, the people, the environment. It's called an area study. So we had a program there that said, okay, based on this war plan, you're going to go do reconnaissance in Poland. Here's your turf. Study this and then come back to us in 3 weeks and tell us how you do this mission. And literally it was a 3-week lockdown. Well, that compound then was contiguous to where John worked in the sniper committee we basically shared the facility, and that's where I first crossed paths with John Simpson. Because John, I always remember walking into Master Sergeant Amelung's office, and it looked like a freaking the Stammtisch in freaking Berchtesgaden, because you had 1,001 roebuck antlers hung all over the place in that sniper shack. So that's where we crossed paths. We didn't connect in the same line of block chart until I got up to Fort Devens, to Bad Tolz, Germany, and Stuttgart.
For this part, we don't have to go chronological because lots of people have so much stuff in their career. But do you want to cover some of the highlights of places you've been, and tell us also, what's it like bringing family along for some of this stuff, especially as you're kind of going around the world?
Yeah, I will. A couple of sort of highlight things is 10th Group in those days, as I said, was focused on fighting the war in Europe, helping to repel a Soviet invasion. We did this around a big exercise called Return of Forces Germany. And the Special Forces part of that was an exercise called Flintlock, which took place in sub-exercises all over Europe. That was my first real exposure to international special operations, because I had a chance to work with some Brit guys on that first. My team didn't deploy, but I was a support troop on the Flintlock 1984. And then subsequent to that, when I got up to staff, I ended up doing a lot of staff planning and coordination with Special Operations Command Europe, and of numerous other. Let's just say I got exposed to some multinational special operators then.
Hmm.
Subsequent to that, again, sort of one of my what I call a high point in my career was after I left SF. I mean, said I wasn't. I was frustrated by the fact I couldn't do more time as a tactical leader. So when the Army said, um, the infantry branch said, we have an opening for an infantry company command in Alaska, I pretty much I didn't blink at that opportunity, and that got me 3 years in Alaska. Um, Again, during a time of the Cold War, during a time when um, we were very much figuring out how to operate in the Arctic,
Hmm.
what that was going to be like for motorized units. Um, uh, and again, probably one of my first real, since we're talking about this on Remembrance Day, um, probably a traumatic experience, but also a great experience was the opportunity to work with Canadian forces uh, during a couple of Brimfrost exercises, including one where a bunch of your guys got killed in a plane wreck up there in Fairbanks in
Okay.
the late '80s. So that was my first exposure to your airborne regiment because we were working with those guys, my company versus their company. They had a couple of liaison officers up there. They introduced me to this interesting drink called a prairie fire. It was tequila with Tabasco floating on top. Abject insanity. But that was my first real exposure um, to Canadian forces, Canadian airborne, and then tragically we lost I think 12 or 15 of those guys in a plane wreck.
Hmm.
While they were air infiltrating a company into Fairbanks, um, got lost in the ice fog, hit the riverbank short of the runway at Fort Wainwright, Alaska, and basically cut a C-130 in half. Spilled, didn't burn, but it was a horrible exercise. We were out in the field waiting for him at the time, so we had to go back and then help with the cleanup so rough times. But in spirit of Remembrance Day, that's one that probably guys that don't get remembered often are those guys up there that
Hmm.
uh, gave the full measure. But Alaska was big, but there was sort of um, the again lots going on with the family at that point. Had my son along the way up there, so we completed the family issue up there in Alaska. Kathy had a job with social services there on camp on Fort Wainwright. Um, just lifestyle up there was interesting because you know, um, you go 3 weeks at 40 below and nothing worked.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in some of the things that are ongoing in the Arctic right now because I can't imagine the impact of thermal imaging has on small unit operations in the Arctic. I mean, it was bad enough up there as it was to try to manage your signature. Nowadays, with those types of sensors, I'm just would be pretty amazed
Hmm.
uh, how to go about doing that. Um, and Yeah, that's sort of it for Alaska. As I said, we were straight up infantry outfit, 180 guys, great bunch of soldiers. Could put a Yukon tent up in about 3 minutes flat. Not exaggerating.
I was gonna ask, when you're up there, like how many people are you in charge of at this time?
Infantry company's about what did I say, 180. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Three, probably less than that, maybe about 150. So three platoons and a weapons platoon at headquarters and a light infantry company at that time. We had a couple of tracked vehicles we called SUSVs, SUSVs, small unit snow vehicle, and so we were, trained to either work as part of a battalion or independently to to basically fend off a Soviet invasion of Alaska. Which,
Nobody's coming in the middle of winter. That's the benefit of up there.
yeah, no, you're on your own. Exactly, you're on your own up there. So, um, but that was I sort of learned my own limits up there. Um, I, I've actually had some correspondence with some of the guys in that company because The one thing that happens in an Arctic environment, this is, I don't know what they're doing nowadays, but um, I always maintain that I probably might have done better in the Army if they had LASIK surgery in the 1970s. Because
Hmm.
if you're wearing glasses with a balaclava down in Alaska at 40 below, your glasses go poof. John, you know this. Um, so I'm trying to run this company walking it through muskeg and getting it from point A to point B. I can't see it beyond the end of my arm. So I found the one kid who was a Ranger school graduate in the company, made him my radio telephone operator. And I said, look, don't tell anybody, but you're essentially navigating the company until I can I get my glasses on. So I hung a map on the back of this guy's rucksack and I followed him as close as I could and told him where to go. And with, like Periscope checks every now and again to get to get a bearings. Otherwise, I was just a blind cowboy.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things we had to do with just the environment forces that on you
Hmm.
up there.
So, so after Alaska, you got a few places you've been between Germany, Sierra Leone, Bosnia. Uh, what other kind of highlights come to mind? What other things did you get up to in your career?
But keeping with the theme that a lot of things that I've touched over the years aren't there anymore. One of which is Bad Tolls, Germany. So I came out of I did a tour in grad school and then came out. This is now the end of the Cold War. I was supposed to be a foreign area officer, which would be a guy working in an embassy. But when the Cold War stopped, the bottom dropped out of that market, and they said, "Hey, we're going to send you back to Special Forces." And I'm like, "Good for me." I said, "But the only assignments we got is this place called Bad Tolls, but we're not sure it's going to be open very long." And I said, "No, no, that's okay. I'll go to Bad Tolls because two small kids at that point." Um, and the Army, true to its word, in fact, sent me to Bad Tolls, Germany. I was there for 3 hours. At that point, John, I'm pretty sure you were there at that point.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The battalion was just right in the middle of, had received notice a day or so before that the United States Army Europe Commander said, "Screw it, close it." So they were in process of closing down the base. And so I got sent right away up to Stuttgart, Germany, to a place called Panzerkaserne to be sort of the lead element, ADBON, as we say, as a term of art, to receive the battalion up there as it came up, and then be the operations officer for uh, the battalion as it when it got fully operational.
Okay. Are you, when you're going through all these places, especially like the overseas stuff, do you learn in any other languages? Or are you not there long enough for it to really matter?
I'm not that good with languages. I mean, I'm sort of one of those. I'm a failure as a special forces officer. I've never been to a formal language schools, but I picked up enough German along the way to be unafraid of a menu or a train schedule.
Yeah.
Much beyond that, I'm pretty shitty when it comes to languages. Answer no on that. Me personally, the outfit that I fell into, the First Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group, had people that were absolute experts at the German language and the Czech language because of the missions they were in. This again, what's going on in Europe right now is the drawdowns are happening. So Bad Tolls didn't close in a vacuum; it closed in the post Cold War drawdown, which means also our Detachment A in Berlin got downsized. So a bunch of those vets came to Bad Tolls, and they were all expert special forces operators and German speakers. The So you had people on the teams that could absolutely talk in multiple different languages. John, weren't you a Serb Croat guy?
Yes, I
Yeah,
was. The army sent me to language school for Serbo-Croatian for the former Yugoslavia.
yeah. No, I think I was on that track at one point as a foreign area officer. I was going to be following in your footsteps in Bucharest, and then, like I said, the bottom dropped out before I got to language school. I had orders to Monterey, and they changed for Bad Tolls. Um, so uh, uh, you know, at that point in time, and I go into this a little bit in the history monograph I wrote about the Sierra Leone operation. Just
Mhm.
kind of what use a bad term of art, shit show it was moving into Stuttgart. We had half the battalion left, half the battalion was coming in. The other half the battalion was new because they came from the States, like me. So we were trying to put all that together at the same time. Again, what's going on is this period of time post Cold War where the role of special forces, I'm not sure we called it special operations back then. I always tell people the only thing that soft was around with soft when we started this was Soldier of Fortune magazine.
Mhm.
Uh, that's that's what SOP was. So the term SOP actually came out of Goldwater Nichols when they created um, created U.S. SOCOM. They created Special Operations Forces. So we're all trying to figure out what that's going to mean to us. And response to crisis um, was part of what 10th Group was in Bad Tolson and Stuttgart was required to do, and that led us to the designation of the third company, Charlie Company, in the First Battalion as the Sinks and Extremist Force, or SIF.
Mm.
So that's really where John and I got to work together over the couple of years of my tenure with that outfit, to first of all form, train, and certify that outfit, and then put it on basically a paying basis, a regular basis um, that'll last until just recently they disestablished the SIFs.
Mhm.
So um, anyway, I was on an SF company on notice to deploy within 4 hours, or at least an element of it within 4 hours to respond to crisis anywhere within the U.S. European Command area of responsibility, which at that time included Africa, which is how we ended up in Sierra Leone.
So your area that you're responsible for, if they say some big thing is going on, you could go anywhere from Europe to Africa, like all of Africa?
From Northern Europe down to, I think it was, Bill, wasn't it like Equatorial Africa?
Now, at that point, UCOM owned, right, UCOM, U.S. European Command, UCOM owned all of Africa. So it could have been anything. Oh yeah, John, I got John.
That's a big area.
Yeah, it was like 86 countries. It was insane. The amount of response time to that. So and again, there were uh, constant things bubbling up. This is just as things are starting to get a little hairy in the Balkans. Yugoslavia is starting to collapse in the 91, 92 time frame. And then you've got, in particular in Sierra Leone, the story that sort of we get to is, um, there was guess what, just like there was last 6 months ago in Mali, a coup by a bunch of officers in the army, president out,
Yeah.
place went to shit. So somebody go down there and put a stop to that. The actual headquarters in charge then at European Command is the Special Operations component up there, which is called SOCEUR, Special Operations Command Europe.
Mhm.
They're actually the guys in charge. We're the tactical guys for for their operational piece. So, not coincidentally, but the commander at that time was the same. It was General Dick Potter, who was the same guy who was the commander of 10th Group when I got there in the early '80s. So I had a working knowledge of what General Potter was like, and he was a no bullshit guy. So if he said you were supposed to be deployed in 4 hours, if you weren't ready to go in 4 hours, somebody was going to, somebody was going to bite the bullet. Somebody was going to get fired, and rightfully so. But so that, and then a lot of prior to that, training adventures trying to get the organization up to snuff, so that it could function in its role as crisis response. John was a part of what we called the Plans and Exercise Division, which was warrant officer, senior NCO, and a couple of guys that worked in the company headquarters that were basically our skunk works. They were the guys that said, all right, we're going to do this exercise. And then they throw all kind of things at us and make life hard for the company leadership and the team to try to really wring out the organization, see if it can function under pressure. Things are not going to go right every time. And
Actually sounds like a pretty fun job. Just making stuff up.
yeah, for an evil bastard like John Simpson, yeah, that was a good job. So,
But yeah, but you want to talk about resentment. Basically, we still haven't gotten into Bill assuming command of Charlie Company. But what you have to understand is that this company had a separate budget for money and ammunition that was separate from the battalion. And basically we would be we'd be down at the bottom of the fiscal year, and we would still have training resources, and battalion would be out of bullets and out of mud. They'd be broke.
Yeah.
And then we had these dedicated vehicles that went along with the thing. I mean, there was like this whole package. And we had at one time we had it was something like when I was on a sniper team in Charlie Company before I went to the Plex, I had like, I want to say I had like 10 weapons that was assigned to me. I mean, our arms room was like, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, because we had so we had pistols, suppressed and unsuppressed. We had submachine guns, suppressed and unsuppressed. We had M16s, CAR 15s, the sniper rifles. We had machine guns, and everything else. And we actually had dedicated ranges. So this was this was the briar patch that Bill found himself in charge of. And before I ask him about assuming command of all of that, it's like I do have to say, so he made me the company master sniper. And I still remember one of the first things he asked me after we came back is he came back from the arms room, and he's like, is there like any rifles that we can get rid of? And I said, oh man, I've been waiting for this one. I said, sir, you get rid of those 300 Winchester Magnums.
Yeah.
And it was like done. And there were guys that were like crying that their
pet weapon.
Their pet smoke pole was now being carted away, and because it was just a ridiculous situation. I mean, because it's like ranges that we were shooting. I mean, we were actually shooting at more like police ranges than normal snipers would be. And just to give you some insight, before you were assigned to Charlie Company, basically they would send you like I got the I left Fort Bragg to get assigned to Charlie Company, and like right after I got there, they cut me TDY orders, sent me back to where I worked at Fort Bragg so I could attend an 8-week Army door kicking school. Okay, so if you can imagine an 8-week SWAT school, everybody in Charlie Company went to that. Okay, and then
except me.
Yeah, but all he had to do was just stand there and go, Sergeant, take down that structure.
Yeah. Pretty much. Well, don't get me wrong. I think I lost a little credit with a lot of guys for not going back to it's called Sephardic, and I couldn't come up with the acronym for $1 million right now.
Special Forces Advanced Reconnaissance, Target Acquisition, and Exploitation Course.
Yeah, Sephardic. So like I said, I fell into the company. I mean, so I was the S3, and for various reasons, the battalion commander said, I need to put you in charge of this. So I was fortunate enough to be selected for command of that outfit. It was all very new to me, and at the same time, it wasn't. because when you kind of the CT, the precise sniping thing, when you really break it down, it was a raid on the room, and I got that from Carl and some of the guys in the Plex. So I started scratching my head, and I went, if I had any kind of prep for this, it was probably the fact that I had experience actually maneuvering a company of people on the ground, which is when you're an 18 wheeler, you don't get that type of experience unless you're sort of in an augmentation deal. So I felt pretty comfortable about uh, sort of what we could and couldn't do. And as John said, the organization was pretty stressed out at the moment I got it. So it had just moved all of its family, all of its equipment from from a prime location to a concern that was really a shithole in Stuttgart at that time. Just vacated by a conventional outfit that took all the doors off all the rooms because they were worried about guys smoking weed in the barracks, so there weren't any doors on any.
Hmm.
I mean, so all that the families were displaced from a incredibly pleasant, self-contained concern in the shadow of the Alps to numerous small little office buildings and housing areas across the greater Stuttgart military community, which is
Wow.
an urban area. By it's Germany's Detroit, so it's all over the place. So at the time I started, I had a 35-minute commute to work, which could have easily turned into an hour commute based on traffic. So that was just you went from I'm walking across the street to my team room to a 45-minute commute every morning. So that's that, and then General Potter was basically breathing down our necks to get to be certified to do this mission. And to do so, we had to get guys from Fort Bragg to come look at what we were doing and check us all off. And so that was hanging over on our heads. And at the same time, then, General Potter was, let's just say, probably interested but not overwhelmed by the fact that we weren't certified. Because if a crisis came along, he expected us to go out the door and perform up to speed, regardless of how much training. So you had a lot of wear and tear on the battalion. So when I came in there, I was like, let's try to simplify things. We did anything that was like standardized the load planning, so we could get. We knew what was going in each one of those vehicles we talked about. We developed some SOPs. We rehearsed going to the airfield, loading up on aircraft. Very frankly conventional stuff. That's S3 air stuff in an infantry outfit. So I felt pretty well prepared to that by virtue of my time to that point. But then we had this operation in Sierra Leone.
So are you actually on the ground in Sierra Leone? Like you are traveling there?
Yeah. So what happened was we were actually in one of John. You were the one that planned this exercise. We were in Nelligan when this happened. So one of the ways, again, this is pre-cell phone. The only thing we had was landlines. We had beepers. So we all carried beepers, and when the beepers went off, we paid attention. So we're over doing an exercise to get ready for our certification, and bang, the beepers go off. So I call over to Sakir, hey, get over here right away. Next thing I know, we're back at Pants Concern, and we're giving warning orders for loadouts of the battalion to take a big slice of the company down to Dakar, Senegal. So one of the unique aspects of the SIF, the Sinks and Extremist Force, you can argue about that name all day long, but the theater commander, the 4-star that runs European Command, doesn't have the authority to put anybody into combat. But what he does have the authority to do is move people around the chessboard. So within 6 or 7 hours of us being notified by the beepers, we're on our way to the airfield, getting on a couple of C-130s from the 1st Special Operation Wing at that point, and are heading south. MC-130s are heading south for Dakar, Senegal. So then we went into an intermediate staging base ISB at Dakar, Senegal, and kind of wait for the system or the situation to develop itself. Along the way, then we sent a small team into Sierra Leone to work with the embassy and find out, do we need to pull people out or don't we? Is it violent? Is it not violent? So this is the front of what's called the non-combatant evacuation operation. So our assessment team goes down there along with General Potter, and they talk to the ambassador, and the ambassador says, "Yeah, I want to get these. Let's get the people out of harm's way. We're not sure the situation's flaky. There's some rioting. There's some shooting. We're not sure how."
For yourself, though, when you're traveling there, are you thinking are you worried about going into a big firefight, or is it you just like, I think it's going to be a security mission? You're not too worried about that yet?
We had a saying in the Plex: the first 12 or 14 courses of actions are all throwaways.
Hmm.
So you plan for every one of those, and so we were concerned enough to say the situation was gray, probably a terminology we weren't really sure what we'd run into when we got there.
Okay.
The There was a large contingent of Nigerian military on the airfield as part of the ECOWAS mission, and we weren't sure what their status was. They weren't sure who we were. So we were prepared to pretty much, we weren't prepared to do D-Day airborne operations forced. We weren't going to take an airfield away from anybody, but we were damn sure going to be able to defend what we got once we got in there. So that was kind of um, uh, our thoughts at the time, as I recall, on what to take. So we were obviously all carrying ammunition, smoke flares, all that type of stuff for command and control. So the mindset was do what it takes to immediately secure the situation, get people out as fast as they can, and then get yourself out of there. That was kind of the mission profile.
When you're, well, I'm guessing, had you ever been to Africa at that point?
No, never had. Uh,
Never
we don't-
been. When you first land there, what's that like? Like what you're seeing, what's kind of going on around you? What's your impression of the place? Like, what are your thoughts?
We did to call it an air assault is probably too high speed, but we had a team on the ground at the airfield doing spotting, assessing, and prep work for us already. And that team, because it had a senior warrant officer who'd been in Africa numerous times, was able to walk over the Nigerians and had actually trained with some of those guys in the past. So again, the sort of ubiquitous nature of special forces. Our man Jimmy goes over there, talks with the guys, and everything's static, and we don't have to worry about the guys. He talks some Hausa to them, and they were basically ready to elect him president of Nigeria after that.
Hmm.
But again, sort of not knowing, and we didn't want to show our hand to anybody in the theater that we were doing this because the geography was the airport in Sierra Leone is on a peninsula across a bay from the main city. So people had to be bussed over by ferry and by buses, and we didn't want to tip our hand that any of that was going on. So we came in at first light, and a couple of MC-130s blacked out. Pulled in there, and my observation was the immediate presence of armed U.S. troops on the ground sort of smoothed everybody out right away.
Okay.
It was equatorial hot. The other, by the way, the other sort of complicating factor on this was there was an Air Force medical detachment on the ground of about 30, 40 people that were training with the Sierra Leone Army. So they were unarmed, unprotected, and that was the other part of it to get in there and sort of secure that group of people, and then get them over the airfield and then, get them out. So, um, that's kind of how it went down for a couple of days. We did our recons, put out security, control traffic. We treat everything like a CT target. Sometimes you're inside, sometimes you're outside. So white side, black side, red side, blue side, that sort of thing around the perimeter. Had all basically inverted our company SOP for attacking a place into defending a place,
Mm.
and worked with the embassy and the State Department guys over the next 3 or 4 days. I think the total was 500 some odd American citizens, Canadians, Germans, some other folks got out. Again, in the big, I kind of write this at the end of the deal is I never want to make too much of that operation because it was pretty benign when it comes right down to it. Um, the question always is, what if you just screwed it up? Well, at that point in time, that was the first time Special Forces had been employed off the continent in a sort of an active manner in quite a while. A couple other non-combatant evacuation operations before, but that kind of set the tone for us for the next couple of years of what life in Charlie Company, the SIP, was going to be like, because we were successful and we did a good job, and everybody came home. We didn't lose nothing, we didn't break nothing, and we were commended by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So
did that lead to like an uptick in kind of your deployment rate?
given that we were any deployments were really cued to the situation on the ground. In other words, we called every spring the neo season. So for whatever reason in Africa, you'd see an uptick of violence around the February March timeframe, change of seasons type stuff. Although on the equator, there's not much of a season change. So after that, chunks of the company were employed as far away as Kyrgyzstan, out in the stands, but we never deployed again under my tenure on an operation. But we got stood up for a hell of a lot of them. So pretty much at the time there was, at that point, the term disturbance in the force was a common occurrence that the beepers would go off, we would assemble, we would do mission analysis, make a determination, check with SOCIR on what the deal was, and then go from there.
With some other guests too, kind of talk about that, and we might have mentioned it in the last one, John. But sometimes people think they don't do a lot or haven't done a lot in their career, but a lot of it just comes down to the stars aligning and decisions being made, right? Like so much of it is out of your hands as to whether you're getting involved in some action or going somewhere. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're still there and serving. So, yeah, I guess a lot of it is just not up to you, right?
Yeah, and again, that's kind of how we handled. John talked about, there's 3 companies in an SF battalion, 3 companies in 110. 2 of them were not part of this. One of Charlie Company was. So there was some natural friction competition going on. And our kind of response to that collectively was, look, we didn't make this up. We're just following freaking orders. I mean, happy to, you guys want to sit around and do this, have at it. So there was, we sort of overcame the friction that way. Occasionally you'd get I had a very good supportive 1st Battalion commander. 2nd Battalion commander came in during my tenure, was not what you'd call user friendly when it came to specialized mission units. We weren't a SMU, but we had a special mission, and this led to an incident John and I were talking about in our pre-discussion where we had our own. Pretty much the SOP for the unit was if we deployed away from Stuttgart, we took everything with us, so that should the beepers go off, we could go to the nearest airfield and catch a ride to wherever you needed. You put a C-130 into Wurzburg Army Airfield, you can come get us up there. We had a special range built up at Wildfleck in Germany that we needed to deploy to get the full profile training. You couldn't shoot anything on Panzerkaserne, basically. So to fire live, we had to go to a U.S. Army training area a couple hours away. We had some guys that said, "Hey, agreed to train a conventional U.S. infantry unit in small unit tactics. Foreign internal defense is a inherent unit SF. This commander decided that was going to be our mission, and we're like, we're okay with doing that with other CT forces across Europe. We do that a lot. We do exercises with the Dutch. We do exercises with the Irish. We get around to exchange tactics, techniques, procedures on the CT front. But you got two other companies to pick for this. Don't pick us. This is sort of prefacing a conversation I had. And again, it says U.S. Army on your chest. The man said, "Nope, you're going to Schweinfurt." And again, my ROTC instructor down the road, Earl, gave me a very good methodology to determine, how far do you push it with a commander when he doesn't want to listen to what you tell him. And Earl called it the ya butt test, and he always said you got to give him 2 ya butts.
Mm-hmm.
And after the third one, Roger out. That's what you want, boss. We'll go do that. So I gave the commander two ya butts of what I thought were pretty good reasons why we should not take this mission. It was way off the beaten track. It was outside of 3.5, 4 hours from Stuttgart. And we were really isolated in a position out there where we didn't think anybody could find us. So Roger out, off we went. And then just one of those, of course, as soon as we get there and we get set up and we're off in this training area in Schweinfurt, Germany, I think, John, was it your team sergeant? Ricky comes up to me and said, "Hey, sir, did your beeper go off?" And I go, "No, mine didn't go off. Did yours?" "Yes, yeah, my beeper just went off." And then 3 or 4 guys come running in. It basically was a patrol base we had set up. Come running and said, "Hey, our beepers just went off." And then this is way out in the middle of nowhere where we didn't think they had any cell phone coverage or any phone coverage at all. So I diddy-bot back to the concern, make a phone call. "You need to get back here right now. Where are you? Sakir wants to know where its SIF is." So I thought, literally the conversation. So I go back out there, and again, NCOs being NCOs, by the time I get back to wherever, they got everything packed up. Everything's ready to go. They're going. And I go, "All right, we're heading back home." Last one there, report in. So we basically had this convoy from hell going down the A3, coming down through Stuttgart, going like 70 miles an hour in a Hemmet, try to get back on time. We had a couple of Mercedes-Benz bread trucks that we usually took on missions, but they weren't conducive to where we were. So we had our stuff in straight up U.S. Army vehicles, broke every speed record, got back just about the time for the first briefing. So we kind of wandered in looking like nothing had happened and nothing went wrong. And like I said, after that, we were good to go. But that's just one of the plethora of funny stories that, shit that happens along the way.
Yeah.
John, were you there when Kirby blew himself up with a flashbang?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that. So we're trying to convince this commander that we're really not all screwed up, and we're in a briefing. The SF group commander has come all the way from Fort Bragg, and one of our guys, not that thick and far ahead, decided that a flashbang is a training grenade, and some of them, this from law enforcement, some of them can rock your socks.
Oh yeah.
In order to lower the temperature on these things a bit, one of our NCOs decided he was going to download one of these things, so made a pile of flash powder there on the range at Wildflick. So I'm in the middle of trying to convince my boss that we're really a squared away outfit, and the company XO kicks the door open and goes, "Sir, Sergeant Kirby just blew himself up with a flashbang. I'll be right back." And going, "Yeah, I'll be followed by the team sergeant. What do we do next?" So those are just a day in the life of that organization with always some fun and happy stuff going on. But again, we survived all that. We have a great bunch of guys. Of the things I did over a 22-year military career, that 18 months I had the opportunity to command the outfit was the best times I had.
I wanted to also ask just about your experience, and you'd mentioned a bit of this already, but working with other countries' forces. So you mentioned the Canadians, some of the stuff you'd done up in Alaska, but once you're over in Germany, just the proximity to so many other countries, and then obviously going down into Africa. Did you I imagine you came across a few other uh, country services? So what was that like? What was training with some of them like, or carrying out operations? Anything in particular that stands out for you?
We used to do this exercise when I was in C Company with the Royal Dutch Commandos up in Netherlands called Black Tulip, and it was a European wide counterterrorism exercise, and they would do some of the wildest shit that I ever saw in my life. But to include fast roping out of these big cranes, like in Rotterdam, so you're like 90 feet in the air, fast roping off the onto the deck of a ship, fast roping off the walk out the end of the crane. Now I didn't do that.
Mm.
I was like, hey, that's beyond my pay grade. But the dudes were out there doing that. So and again, it was sort of a competition. So of who's the best shooter, who's the best, who can clear the deck. So they were out there training on clearing these large cross-channel ferries because that was a real problem set for the Dutch at that point. Um, and observation was, teams using simunitions, and this gets to the difference between law enforcement. John alluded to this on the sniping side a little bit. Law enforcement CT versus military CT is we do these hits and clear, and the guys from Charlie Company would do their assault thing, and the instructors came back once and said, "Hey, how come when our guys do this, and we were training with some police forces at that point, our guys do this, you got some guys, so they'd have mannequins to represent the terrorists in certain places, so you can engage with simulations. And they had some live guys as well that were shooting back. How come you guys always shoot those guys? I mean, so that'd be 10 holes in a target.
Yeah.
Military AT is you clear a room, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but I worked with experts. You're not going to leave a guy behind you. Once you clear a hallway, the next team that comes through doesn't know that you necessarily cleared the hallway, and he's going to get two more rounds. At least that was the deal at that point. So, but this now requires me to fast forward again a bit.
Mm.
I did like a number of tactical exercises, like with the Brit SES during Flintlock. Um, uh, Worked more on the planning side in the second time I was. I'm now out of. I'm now out of Charlie Company. Have done a tour back in ROTC and I'm back in Europe during Bosnia. That's where I really got the opportunity to work most with other international players and in multinational division north.
Okay.
So again, what I always found with those guys were everybody has a special skill set to contribute. I mean the similar type operation to what I was talking about Sierra Leone was I was part of what was called the Joint Paramilitary Commission in Bosnia. This is now in the 97 timeframe in multinational division north. And what we realized in Bosnia was not me, but smart guys like General David A. Grange realized that this is the Serbs, very nationalistic people. There was the Dayton Accords put a very strict military inspection regime on elements of the Serbian military, but had missed out on the fact that one of the major weapons that the Serbs use for ethnic cleansing and irregular warfare and terrorizing the countryside were their police forces, particularly their special. So so there was a joint military commission that was responsible for monitoring and basically keeping the Serbs off balance. So General Grange created the Joint Paramilitary Commission and brought some of us SF guys down from Stuttgart to flesh that out and man it. So our job was to essentially, we called ourselves liaisons to the Klingon Empire. We were out there doing daily inspections and engagements with the Bosnian Serb specialist police, just to keep them off balance and check on what's going on.
Hmm.
So at one point they got to the point they call what I call non-compliant, and S4 Stabilization Force headquarters said, "Okay, we need to raid their headquarters in Doughboy because we think they're storing weapons in there." So that's a long preface to really got to see the proficiency of multinational operations during that event, which is called Operation Full House. Took place in the fall of '97. So it was led by the Nord Pole Brigade, which was Swedes, Norwegians, Danish, and Poles. I think anybody else. Finns were in there too. No, Finns weren't there. But essentially, the Danish commandos did a raid on on their headquarters, and what you also got to see was the U.S. conventional force at that time. You sort of see this as a role for special forces. It happened in the Gulf War. Happened here is sort of that connection between U.S. conventional forces and some multinational forces or regular forces. You need to have somebody in that equation to translate stuff for the conventional staff, or they kind of won't get going. What's going on? They'll try to over control it.
Okay.
They'll do. The U.S. forces absolutely were stuck on doing a rehearsal of concept, or rock drill, and so which was a concept totally antithesis of how the Europeans thought and planned for operations. So rather than just saying, "Hey, look, you guys own the battle space. I expect you to accomplish this. Tell me how you're going to do it." It was, "No, you belong to us. We're multinational Division North. You guys have to do this rock drill," which would totally hacked off the Swedes and the Danes that had to do this, because they thought it was unnecessarily. You don't trust us.
Yeah.
So very much is illustrative of international forces, special operations or otherwise, bring in their own competencies, their own ways of doing business. We don't have enough friends in the world now, so we damn sure better be good at working with our allies and partners, and figure out ways to do work together rather than telling them this is the way we want you to do it.
Yeah.
So
I imagine that would be tough.
that's a long way to get you the answer to your question, Nathan. I apologize, but
Yeah, no, that was a good answer. I think that you did a good job there of just explaining kind of, you have so many people involved and they're coming from so many different places. But now it's like, well, I know the Canadians, Americans, they always train together, but how much training is getting done with European forces or wherever else you might be in the world? Yeah, that could definitely be a problem, especially with all the different languages. So,
yeah, the other thing I want to make sure that, again, I'm talking the context of the late 1990s. After 20 years of operating together in Afghanistan and to a lesser extent Iraq, you really saw the rise, in particular, of multinational special operations in Afghanistan. I mean, so NATO soft today is not anything it would look like in my day of '97. It's, everybody's got a hugely competent special operations force now in Europe. There's a NATO special operations headquarters in Mons, contiguous with NATO headquarters. So all of that growth has occurred since the observations I just made. So I don't want anybody thinking that, oh yeah, I'm bad mouthing what's going on. No, but at that point in time, I'll just be upfront. It was pretty irritating to me as the guy that was sort of being the liaison. My role in Op Full House was to walk around with an RTO and keep other pieces of the operation informed what was going on in downtown Doughboy at that time, Doughboy, Bosnia Herzegovina, and because we had 3 or 4 different things going on to simultaneously hit targets all over the region, just to make sure that we kept those guys off balance. So it was things we were doing then that were new and exciting are probably SOP to organizations today after, particularly after that after combat experience of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Well, you got to figure back then you're at the forefront of a lot of that stuff, right? So either creating it on the fly or you're the first ones to trial, doing some of these exercises or these operations. Yeah, and I mean it's context dependent. So we're talking about a different year than right now. But I've never had anybody say anything bad about someone talking on here in that context because we're talking about a certain time period. So, and that's your experience in there. So, um, just for time's sake, I do want to make sure that we do talk about um, transitioning out of the military. So, what where does the end of your career kind of come, and what does that decision look like for you? Because for some people, it's pretty hard. You can be so structured and everything in your army life, but then to transition to the civilian world, very different for some people. So I'm just wondering, kind of, what did that look like for you as you're approaching that time, and then you finally make that decision? What was it like?
Again, this is sort of a peacetime army story. Um, I was at Special Operations Command Europe. Finished up at the time in Bosnia, and then we did Kosovo after that. Did some uh, recovery missions. We were involved with that at Sakir. Uh, Great organization, Sakir at that time. We had, and still is to this day, a very good little joint staff organization, capable of doing a lot of different things at once. Um, but and I was working for a tremendous boss, two tremendous bosses. I said, I'm going to stick around here. So I opted to extend another year in Europe. So for any officer, and John, I'm not sure how it is for you guys, is you either step up the ladder, go up the ladder, or you get out, or you find, or in some cases you can just kind of hang around. As you make your pay grades, you really have a decision point at each one of those promotion. Well, for me, that happened at the transition or the selection from lieutenant colonel, which I was at the time, to full colonel. Well, I wasn't selected for full colonel, so that's called the big passover. If anybody wants to know what being passed over is like, watch the movie Bull Durham. I call it the Bull Durham experience because there's a little ritual they go through with you. They think you don't know that you've been passed over when you can kind of tell what's going on. They bring you in, and so the scene in Bull Durham where where Kevin Costner is like being sent off to the minor leagues or just been cut. That's kind of what it's like. Hey man, sorry for you. Your time is over. You're faced with a choice then either take the next assignment the Army offers you, which could be anywhere, retire, or that's basically your choice of two.
Okay.
So at that time, and what the Army's basically telling you when you're passed over is, hey, we'll let you serve for a couple more years. And I'm not trying to be either self-deprecating or critical, because I just think this is the way it is with a big organization. Nothing personal, but you didn't make the grade. We'll let you serve for a couple of years, but we're not going to really invest anything in you in terms of professional development or school.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm going, there's probably something else out there for me. And I need to go find it rather than wait for the Army to send me to wherever they want to send me. So I dropped my paperwork, retired within, I think between January and April 15th of 2001, I was out of the Army and on my way back to, I retired, took a contract job, and then a civil servant job of what then was Joint Forces Command in Suffolk, Virginia. Again, another joint assignment. I had a lot of purple joint assignments on my resume at that point, so it was a decent fit for me. But then, 6 months later, you're sitting there. I'm being sworn in as a government service employee when the towers fell. So I did my the transition from first to a contractor and then to government civilian. the hard part was the family part, because the sort of you don't want to at the point in time when you're parting service with the United States Army and you know that paycheck is showing up every month. Now you're looking at you got college, you got homes to pay for, you
Yeah.
got that stuff. So I wanted to get to work as soon as possible. I moved 6 months ahead of my family and had to go through that period of separation where they were still finishing up the school year in Stuttgart while I was working in Suffolk, Virginia.
Oh, so they're still back overseas.
Yeah, I kind of left them in Stuttgart, and my job was to take the dog back. They didn't want to mess with the dog, so I got me and the dog back in Suffolk for a couple of months. So that was interesting, not pleasant, but good Lord wills, family did just fine. Came back, we transitioned there, and then I did 10 years as a Navy civilian in civil service there in the Suffolk, Norfolk area. And then when again, common theme, guess what happened? So we've closed bad tolls, we've closed Ninth ID's gone. The division I served in Alaska, that's gone. Bad tolls is gone. I get the GIPCOM, and what happens to it? Poof, it's gone. So they disestablished that. So we had to go through that whole disestablishment process. And I ended up a very good friend of mine, colleague from 110 and from SOCUR, got me a job at the U.S. SOCOM headquarters in Tampa in 2012 period. And then so by that point, the kids were done with college, off on their own, and Kathy and I had the opportunity to move to Tampa.
And that's for the viewer, for the listening audience, that's Tampa, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Half of Canada lives down there, man.
Yeah.
That was, again, we keep going back to the family theme. That was probably the one time that Kathy and I had by this point, she'd been through nursing school and had a very lucrative nursing career going on. And I was basically going to uproot her out of that. She agreed to go on the proviso. Said, when I get to Florida, I'm going to play golf. And so that's how it worked out. So I did another 10 years there at SOCOM headquarters and retired as a civil service in 21. And that's where in SOCOM headquarters where I really got to work with Canadian forces and Brits, because I was part of the effort then by the SOCOM commander was a guy named Admiral Craven, and he decided to establish an international coordination center down there at SOCOM. So my job as a civil servant was to stand that up and then man it and run it for a couple of years as a civilian program manager at SOCOM. And that was a hoot. There are 28 nations down there all under one roof at SOCOM.
Wow.
Giving me an international network of people that are both friends and colleagues. And I'm about to take off to Bratislava, Slovakia this week because I'm working for something part-time these days called the Global Soft Foundation, which is a nonprofit focused on improving special operations forces globally.
Okay.
So that transition in 2012 really got me. Last 10 years as civil servant, and then some opportunities now in my retired years to still keep in touch with the friends and colleagues from international special operations.
So do you do a lot of travel now for that? Or is it just here and there?
Yeah, I'm about every 6 months. What the Global Soft Foundation is all about trying to improve interoperability between U.S. and international special ops. They do it. One of the ways and means that they use are conferences across the world that bring the community together to talk about problems and talk about common challenges, highlight what's going on in international. We're in Slovakia for a reason to highlight what's going on with the developments in Slovak Soft next week. And my little piece of that then is kind of leveraging some of the contacts I've made over the years to bring international special operations guys and industry guys in the same room to have a conversation one-on-one about what my requirement is. It's all about defining requirements. You've been to a trade show. You can spend
Yeah.
hours on the floor of a trade show trying to find something that looks good, and you'll end up with a sack full of swag, hand grenades, rubber hand grenades, pens and paper, a bunch of koozies, that kind of stuff. GSoft, Global Soft has taken a more pragmatic approach to that and saying, hey, international partner, what are your requirements? Industry guys, who can meet this requirement? We go through a little coordination process, and then during the conferences, we put these guys across the table from each other and let them talk.
Mhm.
That's my piece of this of the conference, is to help run that little piece of the event.
Very cool. I think that's a great idea. All right. Well, and how's the family doing now? So I imagine you finally get to stay in one place now. Just do the odd traveling.
When I retired, we opted not to stay in Florida, which um, you could spend the rest of your life in Florida. It's a great lifestyle. But both my children currently live up here in Virginia. My daughter, she's a lead contractor for something called Women, Peace, and Security, which is an engagement program run by the Office of Secretary of Defense. And I get women, peace, and security. It has nothing to do with gender studies or that. But WPS is all about getting women involved in security situations. And so I'm able to explain what my daughter does by saying, hey, look, when I was in Bosnia driving around and was war torn and ethically cleansed, we always said, man, these guys just need a job and be able to go home to their families every night, 3 meals, and they'll stop killing each other. And guess who wanted to help with that situation? The women of Srebrenica were a real deal. They're the unfortunate people who are victimized by all this, but the women on the ground being a part of the situation or part of the solution was part of what that's all about. So my daughter's been pretty transformational in that. She did some time in Stuttgart at AFRICOM, and then is a contractor up there. My son um, uh, planned to enter the priesthood with the Catholic Church, and he ended up getting married and being director of evangelization at the church in Richmond. So
Mhm.
where I sit kind of midway between Richmond and DC. So both of them have blessed me with grandkids. So we're out here in the sticks, um, enjoying life. Got 3 acres on a hilltop in Virginia, and bass fishing, playing golf, and taking care of the kids, and keeping track of my retired buddies like John. That's the kind of, to me, that's the center of gravity, is your faith, your family, and uh, your good buddies is kind of what's going to entertain me for as long as I got left.
Man, you can't ask for much more than that. I think that's a good place to wrap it. I want to say thanks to John for getting you on here and convincing you to come on the show. But thanks for coming on and
More than a little.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit more interesting than Bill was willing to admit.
Yeah.
I told you, be boring. Yeah, listen, I'll close with this. I'm appreciative of where I started. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to this audience. Has always been pretty cool. The fact that you're north of the border is number of guys I know the Canadian Forces are not large enough. Everybody I've worked with has always been hugely cooperative, and also able to stake out Canada's role in what the security solution is, and incredible professionals. Probably my biggest regret of all this stuff we talked about, I never got to go to Menton Day back when 10th Group was doing that.
Hmm.
So, familiar with Menton Day?
No, I haven't heard of this.
Okay, so once again, an organization I wasn't associated with it, but it's not around anymore. The way the Canadian and U.S. Special Forces got together during World War II, there was a combined U.S. Canada First Special Service Force. It was called the DAG. That is the U.S. Army patch today. And the Canadian Special Forces has sort of the same patch, but First Special Forces was half Canadian, half Army. Trained out in Montana. There was a movie made about called The Devil's Brigade.
Okay.
Like the Green Beret, there's a lot of bullshit in the movie, but you get the idea of Canadians and Americans, the problems that they had culturally playing together. So this was a pretty effective organization in small unit tactics raid. They called it the Devil's Brigade for a reason. Like Bad Tolls and like the SIF, the powers that be about 1944 decided that, hey, we no longer need this organization. So they disbanded it in a place called Menton, France. So I think it's December, a bunch of Canadian soft guys and a bunch of U.S. Special Forces guys get together for Menton Day, and it's a fairly big piss up.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, the guys at 10th Group John, remember in our days, they used to take a bus up there, and those dudes would come back and just like fall out of the bus. They were, it was not a pleasant ride back, I'm sure.
You know what? That's all. I'll have to look that up because that sounds interesting.
Just want to close out with a shout out to my Canadian friends and the other international guys I got to work with. We live in dangerous times. The other thing I like about working for GSF is, ask the question, if this was 1939 and we thought we were getting a war in a couple of years, what would we be doing? And for sure it's making friends, and for sure it's making sure that our friends' stuff works with our stuff, and we can talk to them and they can talk to us, and our guns work with their guns.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of what I get to help out a little bit of that with via the Global Soft Foundation, and happy to answer any questions on that. And it's been an enjoyable 2 hours. And you're right, John, I ended up talking too much. Over.
At the end, so when I put the episode up, I'll put any links that you would like to the Global Foundation, the Global Soft Foundation.
Yeah,
and
fair enough.
If I could, I'll try and see if I can find something on Menton, and people can kind of look into that if they got a website or anything. So I want to say thanks to both of you for being on here today. Hang on the line because we'll chat after. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for your service, and thanks to your family as well for giving their time.
Hey, thanks a lot, Nathan. John, always honored to work with you and hang out with you. Nathan, it's been a pleasure. And again, best to your audience, best to you and your family. And thanks for doing this for everybody.